Hello and welcome to CJB Games, Cameron here, and today I'm bringing you something slightly different to what I had planned originally. So what usually should happen is after each sprint, I'll do a play session with friends. Unfortunately, this play session was such a disaster, it can't really warrant its own video, so I've kind of tacked it on to the start of Sprint 2 instead. So with that out of the way, please sit back and enjoy the failure that was the first sprint test, and then we'll dive straight into the second sprint. So you should be seeing just a black screen with 4 options now, right?
Yeah, friend
Okay.
is not wrong.
No, I'm not seeing that.
It is... Wait, no, what? Yeah.
Spelled wrong.
There we go, that's the first bug. So what you want to do is go to play with friends and click in the search. You'll see next to join there's like a white box. You can type in there, so if you copy and paste what I've put in Discord into that, then click join.
When I hit join, nothing happens.
Yeah, nothing happens.
Doesn't take you to a new page at all. Alright, so I think... So, yeah, so it's not working for, like, over different Wi-Fis at the minute. It's working over the same Wi-Fi. Alright, well, I got to figure out why that's not working then. We'll try it again in a few more days, so I've not got much more to do to hopefully fix that, but we'll see. So there you have it, that was basically what happened with that. I'm not really that upset about it, honestly. Whenever I do a project like this, I think it's a given that things will most likely not work the first time. But if anything, this has only got me more motivated to get it working the second time. And with that out of the way, we can write down what we plan to do for Sprint 2. So this is what I have noted down thus far. Score system working in the game. Save player data and load it from relaunch, playground area created, enemy to follow the player when they are in range, get multiplayer working for real this time, splash screen front end included, menu music and button sounds, day-night cycle, a few options in the main menu, and then I want to have these options, the same options in the pause menu as well. So that's the plan so far, and as usual it might be subject to change once we get into the sprint. To start things off, we are going to begin with something I love, environment art. Now the sprint detailed the playground area, so that is exactly what we'll be creating. Firstly, I need to make the actual ground, so I have a base to build everything on. Because I have this white box template, I can export certain objects as an asset and load them into Blender to work from them. I find this really helps when it comes to scaling things and allows objects to fit together really well. When modelling, I decided to cave in one side of the mesh, as I want that to be a place where weeds and grass are growing and the mud is sort of retaking the ground. It's very important that I keep thinking to myself what I want it to look like in the end, so I can make the proper edits now. That way I don't have to come back later and change things in hindsight. Once the ground was fully modelled, I sculpted the more details parts, unwrapped it, and imported it into Substance Painter. Now we can add a texture, which didn't take long because this is quite a simple piece. Once that's finished, it's time to import it and place it into Unreal. I had to fiddle around a bit with the metallic and roughness properties to get it looking how I wanted it to, but this was mainly because it was the first mesh I've imported, and now that that's done I can use this knowledge for all other assets I create. Now that the ground is finished, I want to create a row of bricks around it. I loaded up the Blender save that contained the ground and used that as a basis for the scale. Once the brick was modelled, I took it straight into Unreal and started placing them. I usually place the asset in the engine before I begin texturing, as I find it helps me notice any issues with the model itself, and that will cause issues in Substance Painter if I take it into it straight away. The key to the bricks was definitely the placement. Each brick had to be fiddled with slightly to make the world look more lived in. Now that they're all placed, we can begin texturing them. I decided to go for a slightly red brick with a bit of moss on them, and I hope it will look good when the foliage is placed on top of them. The next asset we need to make is the fence posts to the playground. I wanted to keep these around waist height for the player to really sell the idea that this playground was just intended for children. I did 2 little nails to the front of them for extra detail, and now it's time to be placed in the scene with the other assets. This was a lot harder to place than the other things, as I had to take into account clipping as well. Once enough were placed though, I could copy and paste chunks of them and place them, and it still gave a random sort of realistic placement. In regards to the part where the tarmac is receding, I decided to have that part of the fence on its side. I feel like this really gives a visual flair to the scene and keeps it a little more interesting. I also included it to have another area of escape in the playground that the players could utilise when interacting with the monster enemy. Once all placed, I got the simple texture applied and could move on to the next part of the fence. This blockier part will act as the supports for the fence. This was by far the easiest part to create and place in the scene. For the texturing, I made sure to open up the fence post file so I could copy the parameters and keep the fence structure consistent. Finally, we can move on to the horizontal parts of the fence. This is the part that will hopefully tie the whole structure in a nice neat bow. Texturing wasn't really that different to the previous two assets, and the placement wasn't too taxing either. Obviously the partitions and the fence weren't equidistanced throughout the area, so I used Unreal's native scale function to get them fitting perfectly. This did compress the texture somewhat, but it really isn't that noticeable unless you look really closely. A lot of times I also find it easier to place my assets in Unreal's unlit view, as sometimes the shadows and lighting can really get in the way. Well, with all those assets now complete and in the game, I am liking the progress of this first area. I'd say it has a lot more that needs to be done to it, but I like how it looks thus far, and I think it's up to the standard that I want this game to be held to. Thank you for watching, guys. If you want to follow the progress of this game, you can subscribe for more devlogs. And if you want to support my work, consider getting my last game on Steam now, called Escape from Violet Institute. See you all next time.